The next slide is to do with members. Do any of your organisations have problems where there is uncertainty as to who are the members? Yeah, I think this is a problem in particular for charities, because charities are supposed to keep a list, a register of members, but not everyone does that. So there is then confusion. I could come along and say, well, I asked to become a member, the board told me I could be, but I'm not on this list, and the board will say, no, you never asked us, and we can't find the paperwork. So there's huge confusion, and then you say, well, why is it important? Well, it's important if you have to try to conduct business and pass resolutions. Can I vote? Can't I vote? Who knows? So that's an issue which sometimes arises. Because one way around that now, there is a possible solution with the Charity Commission. Whoops, taking my microphone off. The Charity Commission can decide as a referee, and it can, if you go to it and email it on behalf of the charity and say, we would like you to tell us who are our members, because we can't work it out for ourselves, then they will do that. So that's a possibility.
Sorry to interrupt again, but one of the problems that I met with when I started work 10 months ago was that everybody who used the service was core members.
Yes.
And which is a completely different thing. But they had been led to believe that they were all equal members of the, and that has caused a massive amount of problems. So, I mean, we actually now call people service users, and I know that's horrible, but it's like, what do you choose to call people who use the service?
It's a very, very good point.
Which is completely separate from members on the board of trustees.
You must distinguish between the voting members, or you could call them associate members. For example, I'm a member of the Woodland Trust, so I have the tree planted for me, I receive the newsletter, but I cannot vote at the AGM. I am not a member in that sense. And there are a lot of disputes arise within charities where people are not clear whether they can vote or can't. There is nothing wrong with having different categories of members, which is very, very good, but it's just the communication is the very important thing.
One of the things we have at the moment is we have one category of membership. Everybody votes.
Yes.
And our service users, they pay a fee and become members when they join us. But we are actually considering now that we are going to look at whether we should have different categories of membership, because it does get confusing. We've got summer couples, so they have one, but should it be individual? There's all sorts of things. So we want to clarify, change our articles of association to make sure that it's very, very
Somebody
clear.
could do with producing a very simple guide.
There is.
Oh, is there?
There is a guide, and I can tell you what it is. It's called Guide RS7. Which you can find on the Charity Commission website. Right. If you go onto the website and you go into their search engine, I believe it's RS7, which is guidance on membership issues within charities. So please look at that. Okay?
I was going to ask, at an AGM, we've got one coming up. What we formally usually do is, as people turn up, then they fill in their name, they write their name, and that gives them voting rights.
Yeah.
We don't actually have them paying anything.
It would be normal to ask people to pay a subscription if you thought that was appropriate. I mean, it won't be a huge amount of money, but I think
£10, but it covers some postage and newsletters and stuff like that, really.
And I think it gives people a stake in the organisation. So it's worthwhile considering. The next point is board meetings. In order to try to streamline your decision making, if you have board members who are not all in one place, it may be appropriate to have a board meeting by telephone conference. I've done that before with a client where we've had the chairperson in the room with me, and we've then had the people all over the place, especially when you have to meet at short notice. That's always an option. And you can change your articles to put in provision to allow for that. And if you've got loads of money and you're really flash, you could even try video conferencing, which is what these people have done on this.
But sometimes you can hold them at a local solicitors who have all of those for you.
Yeah, why not?
For free.
Yeah. Preparing for meetings. Now, I'm sure you didn't get all of your papers by carrier pigeon to arrive for today. But I'm sure also that you received a lot of paperwork to organise this in terms of the papers for voting at the AGM. What you can do, there is provision now for charities to ask their members if they will be happy to receive information by email, or even for the charity to put all the information onto a secure part of their website. So that will save a lot of paperwork, but it obviously means that people have to become more used to using email. Do people still not tend to use email? Or does it vary? Is it quite patchy?
I think we mainly post because it's just it's too patchy, really.
Yeah. But what you might want to do is give yourselves the flexibility for the future, because I think in 5 or 10 years, if I ask the question, it will change, that you have the ability to send out information electronically, which includes both by email and also by putting it onto your website.
That doesn't need to be included in the Constitution then, does it?
It's preferable, because you can actually say, in most constitutions, it probably says now we can send out notices by first-class post, possibly by fax. What you can do is say, or by electronic communication. But you also need to get the consent of the members, because you obviously need an email address from them as well.
Yeah.
So.
See like when you have to give people a specific amount of notice for, say, an AGM,
Yes.
do you want to have something that says this person's picked up the email? Do you want to be sure they got it?
There are provisions, and there is a code. I think it's the Institute of Chartered Secretaries. I forget the full title, but there are a series of protocols where that is provided for. And so fax, for example, as long as you've got the fax receipt page, I think it's going to become more and more common now, and people are saying to send by email. But it's always possible, if people say, I'm not happy to receive by email, they are entitled to receive a hard copy by post. Okay. The next point. The point that this gentleman made over there, that every year they just review the document just to check that it's still relevant and still appropriate. And I think that's a very, very good practice. You may not want to do it every year, but I wouldn't suggest leaving your document for 10 or 15 years before you look at it and see whether or not it's still fit for purpose. In case you're wondering, this is Sanskrit, which I don't understand. So does everything make sense? For example, the quorum for your meetings, the number could be far too small or it could be too large. So you might have a quorum of 60 and you only have 70 members, and it could be, so you check all those things. That's the second element, which is about how you might be able to improve things. Another thing just to mention before I move on is calling the annual general meeting. You don't actually now have to have an annual general meeting if the members are the same as a trustee, so you don't have a wider membership. It's not necessary for you to call an AGM, as long as your constitution doesn't say you will hold one. So if it just says you can hold one, you don't have to now. So I think in a lot of circumstances it's very, very helpful to hold an AGM, because it's a forum for everybody to get together like today and to meet one another, to support one another and find out what's going on, but it's not essential. And when your membership is quite limited, you might want to reconsider that.
But that's only if your members are the same as the members as your trustees?
No. No. I was just suggesting that it might be appropriate, rather than at a meeting, we're the trustees, we are now going to adjourn the meeting, we're going to put on our hat as members, and here's the AGM, which is a bit crazy. But it may be appropriate where the membership is quite small and where the members are kept informed otherwise of what's going on. Also, the period of notice for calling an AGM can now be reduced to 14 days. 14 from 21. Now, this is all English law, so I'm not quite sure what the situation is in Scotland, I'm sorry.
This is changed in company law, is it?
Yes. Yes, it's a change. So if your constitution says you will call the meeting on 21 days' notice, then you will have to change your constitution. But if it doesn't say anything, you can change your constitution so it actually says 14 days, if you want to do that. Again, it may not be appropriate, because you may have a widespread membership and you may want to give them sufficient time to prepare and to decide whether or not to come.